We are back for our roundtable on the social impact of reconstruction. So let me introduce our panel. Of course, there's Michel Al-Maqdissi, whom I don't need to introduce again. Next to me is Andrea Balbo, who is an archaeologist. He studied in Bologna and Paris and holds a PhD in archaeology from the University of Cambridge. He conducted research all over the world, including Syria. His interests include linkage between climate change, conflict, and heritage. And he is currently project manager at ALIF, the International Alliance for the Protection of Heritage and Conflict Areas. This international organization, which is based in Geneva, was founded in 2017 in response to the massive destructions in recent years of heritage sites. Emanuela Sebastiani is a scientific collaborator at InZone, a program of the University of Geneva, whom Patrick talked about in his speech, pioneering innovative approaches to higher education in communities affected by conflict and humanitarian crisis. She holds a master's degree in conference interpreting from the University of Geneva and is currently responsible for InZone's English and French language programming. She coordinated the workshop series on the Palmyra heritage design for Syrian refugees in the Azraq camp in Jordan. Jenny Manji is senior lecturer and researcher at the Institute of Sociological Research, Department of Sociology at the University of Geneva. She was previously scientific collaborator at the Swiss Forum for Migration and Population Studies at the University of Neuchâtel. Her research focuses mainly on transnational migration, diasporas, sustainable development, social and cultural identities, and citizen participation. She teaches visual anthropology and visual sociology at the University of Geneva, as well as migration dynamics. So let me start with you, Jenny Manji. You recently did a sociological study for the University of Lausanne on the impact of 3D modeling of the Palmyra site. So tell us a little bit more about this study, because it's extremely interesting.
Yeah, of course. Well, the aim of the study was really to engage in a reflexive and analytical approach around the social impact of digital objects that virtually reproduce historical monuments, and of course, in this case, the 3D modeling of the Baalshamin temple in Palmyra. The attention has been centered also on a side question, but mainly on the capacity of the virtual reproduction to participate in the reconstruction of a cultural identity of the Syrian mobile population, and including also young generation. Secondly, in the preservation and transmission of cultural heritage, including to young generation. And thirdly, also, it's, let's say, participation to social cohesion and pacification processes as well. These are the three main aspects. Well, results are very let's say, are very large.
It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah. So I can just focus on some results just in 2 minutes like that. And in any case, if not, I'm there for other precision. Well, maybe it's important to focus that the research has first evidence the importance of Syrian cultural heritage in general, and of Palmyra in particular, for the definition of a respondent's identity. Palmyra represents, in fact, for the diaspora, an emblematic place of memory linked to very pleasant emotion and memories, and able to create a strong sense of cultural identity. This is very important. So the link between heritage and identity is very, very strong. It is also worth noting that the importance attributed to Syrian heritage seems to have been multiplied by the migration experience, the exile, as well as by the destruction of the cultural heritage that resulted from the conflict. As for the capacity of the immersive 3D modeling experience of the Temple of Baalshamin to arouse very strong emotion and reconstruction of identity, results has shown very different perception and appreciation among the diaspora of this kind of immersive experience. So in a sort, we have a sort of a debate between perplexed and supporters of such virtual experience of virtual reconstruction, that also cross a subgroup of specialists from the diaspora of archaeologists and architects. And so what we can say very briefly is that the perplexed express reservation about their significance, their excessive cost, and more generally their capacity to engage in deep, let's say, emotional encounters. The other side, supporters' main argument lie in their importance for documentation and research, either in view of a real reconstruction or a virtual reconstruction, and on its innovative character, and especially in their perceived capacity to have a strong impact on the young generation. In terms of social impacts, and I will finish with that, an important conclusion of this study is that the virtual reconstruction of the Baalshamin temple is considered to be able to favor identity reconstruction of young people, especially in the diaspora, a process of transmission of cultural memory, especially to people who have not directly direct knowledge of the site of Palmyra, such as young generation of Syrians, young people in the diaspora, but also inhabitants of host countries. And this approach would help to disseminate to this audience more positive image of Syria that those usually conveyed, especially in the past, of course, in the media, or directly experienced by young Syrians during the conflicts. And it would also represent a way of raising awareness on the importance of cultural heritage and its preservation, as well as the extreme richness of Syrian culture and history.
Okay, so that's the summary of the study. So in other words, we see that the memory, the heritage is extremely important. You were very emotional in your presentation, Michel Al-Maqdissi. How do you think that reconstruction and 3D modeling, how do you think it will help, or do you think it will help in this sort of quest for common heritage for Syrians who are basically all over the world today?
Je parle en français. Je pense que c'est une très bonne idée. Ça pourrait être la base d'une documentation, mais ce qui est très dangereux dans la reconstruction en 3 dimensions, c'est que il faut que ça reste au niveau digital, ça veut dire au niveau des documents dans nos computers. Il ne faut pas aller sur le terrain et recommencer la reconstruction. Ça sera l'erreur fatale. Ça sera l'erreur fatale. Il faut dire que nous, en tant qu'archéologues, un monument, c'est une succession des événements. Et la destruction, c'est une des événements qui a vécu ce monument. Je ne veux pas trop parler de ça, mais je me souviens au moment de la destruction de Bel et de Baalshamin, le dynamitage, j'ai eu pas mal des journalistes qui m'ont contacté. J'étais à Tyr en ce moment, après de retour à Paris. Alors finalement, j'ai parlé avec La Croix, le journal La Croix, en lui disant: j'accepte qu'on fasse une reconstruction du temple de Bel, de la cella. C'est la cella qui a été détruite, le temple principal, mais à condition. Moi, j'étais le dernier qui a fouillé à Bel en 2011. Et je me souviens très bien, je ne sais pas pour quelle raison, j'ai amené avec moi une chaîne Wi-Fi. Et toutes les soirées, il n'y avait pas de touristes à cette époque, je m'installe dans la cella et j'entends de la musique, disons, avec une sonorité formidable. C'était, disons, la crépuscule de Dieu de Wagner, c'était le Requiem de Verdi, le Requiem de Mozart, des choses comme ça à ce niveau. Et une sonorité, j'étais libre dedans. C'est une sonorité formidable. Alors j'ai dit j'ai bien précisé à la journaliste, si vous arrivez à remettre la même sonorité, j'accepte la reconstruction. Je pense que c'est impossible. Je pense que c'est impossible parce que la pierre et tout à l'intérieur, dans les deux thalamos, et à l'intérieur, il y avait une zone à côté du thalamus sud, où quand on s'assoit là, on sent qu'on est dans le ciel. À côté disons, il y avait Palmyre, c'est bien dégagé. Il y a le soir, on voit tout l'horizon.
So we hear your emotion and we understand your emotion. So we know that there are 15 million Syrians living outside of the country who had to flee their country. It's difficult to maintain a common heritage, Andrea Balbo. Your organization, Alif, uses cultural heritage to promote peace. That's the purpose of your organization. So is 3D modeling a useful tool for you? We hear that it could bring emotions. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We heard it in the study. It depends on the generation. What's your feeling?
Thank you for your question. So I have to say, as an introduction, that the project on the Temple of Baalshamin was the first of its kind for Alif. So it was the first one that we supported in the digitization for several reasons. And since then, we moved on to do more of this because we see there is an input. There is an input in many ways. If you look at the social input, I think that the same way that it's easier to bring with us an e-book rather than the library we have home, and considering the context in which refugee forced migrant communities need to leave their home, I think is a very, very powerful tool in that sense for them to bring with them a capsule of their original, their homeland. In that sense, and because Jenny stressed the importance of identity, I think you mentioned, I think this is another tool. I mean, the same way we use photographs, images to recall the good moments of our lives, I think is a very powerful tool in that sense, that it can help renovate. It can work as a support when you are not home, when you have no access to your homeland, to find a connection with it. So for us, there are also technical reasons for supporting this kind of initiatives. There are aesthetical reasons. I think the manuscripts that were shown are unique. I mean, there is only one copy, as far as I know, of these notebooks, of these images. So it is important to preserve them physically, which I think Patrick and Unil are taking care of as well. But it's also important to share them, and I think there's a lot of potential there. I don't think we have seen the whole of it. So there is also potential that is now unseen, untapped.
So it's a useful tool for you.
Definitely.
It's a very useful tool. So Emanuele Sebastiani, we heard a bit about your ONG from Patrick, about InZone and your embroidery project in the refugee camp. You were able to show this 3D modeling to very young Syrians, high school age. I propose that we listen to their reaction because they made little videos for us tonight, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. So if I could ask Roland to...
Hello, my name is Batul and I am 18 years old. I live in Azraq camp and I have finished high school in 2021. I have never seen Palmyra before I participated in the project. It was amazing, and when you look at it, it takes you from one place to another as if it is an imaginary place. I was shocked and upset when I saw how it was destroyed.
My name is Fatima and I am 19 years old. I have graduated from high school in 2021. I am from Palmyra and I live in Azraq camp. I have been to Palmyra many times in the past and it was amazing. When I look at Palmyra today, I feel very sad and upset. Palmyra is a very beautiful and interesting city and it has no negative sides. It is one of the most visited touristic destinations in the world and I really can't express my love for here.
Dear friends, my name is Omar Al-Zobi. I am 19 years old. I have had the pleasure participate in Palmyra workshop and to learn about photos editing skills and Palmyra history at some time. This workshop helped my establishing memory of the city in our mind. The most exciting was to experience the VR videos about Palmyra. It is really something unbelievable and exciting to see how the technology can bring the world to you and see the past in front of your eyes. It was nice feeling when I watched in video and I said myself, how beautiful to see what technology can do and how it connect us to our heritage. I can be a good tool to interact the new connects the her history and her heritage. It is too expensive to get such equipment in the internet connection that good in our area. It is worth a try.
So we hear things. I think it's wonderful how they tried to speak English and how they made these videos. We hear things like an imaginary place makes me sad and upset. Also how technology can bring in front of our eyes how beautiful it was to see the past in the front. We hear a common sense of belonging, actually.
Yes, I would agree. So first of all, we have a learning center in Azraq camp, Jordan, not too far from the Syrian border, where we offer higher education opportunities to Syrians of all ages. These people are young, as you can see, 18, 19 years old, but we've worked with people of all ages and all walks of life thanks to a recent partnership with the University of Lausanne and University from Milan under the framework of this project. And it was a wonderful opportunity. I wish they could be here with us tonight. So it's really an honor for me to bring their voice here and share it with you. What we observed is mainly two groups of people, those who had actually seen Palmyra and were familiar with it, either for having visited it or for actually being from Palmyra, and another set of people, not just young, but again of all ages, who had never had the chance of seeing it. And the first group was actually very curious about the project. There are strong emotions, like my colleague just said, linked to Palmyra. It's such a special place and part of their DNA, really. And the embroidery activity was one way of tangibly sort of reclaiming part of their cultural identity. And the second group made up principally of younger people, so the younger generations, well, they were ecstatic about what technology can bring, right, and what the project was able to bring to them. So their response was overwhelmingly positive. Not that the response of the first group wasn't. They're just probably less familiar with technology. But in both cases, you can tell how Palmyra is such an important part of their collective memory and their cultural heritage. And that in some cases, obviously, sort of reopens a wound because they're refugees, they're displaced, some of them may not be able to return to their country. And yet it is a way of keeping the memory alive, and that's essential.
Michel Al-Maqdissi, how important do you think it is to have these feelings, this emotion around when people look at this 3D modeling? How important is that to keep this heritage going? Or do you think it's a negative tool? You think it's a positive tool? Are you happy that young people are able to see this modeling to help them continue in their feeling Syrian, being proud of being Syrians?
Absolument, oui. Parce que moi-même, quand je vois ce que Patrick a réalisé pour Baalshamin en 3 dimensions, c'est impressionnant. C'est impressionnant, ça me donne la vision que j'ai visitée en 2011. Et j'aimerais pour que ce soit pour les autres encore monuments, surtout le Temple de Bel. Mais ça, c'est une grosse affaire. Mais c'est quelque chose qui va aider et va m'aider et va aider les archéologues et les Syriens à garder une certaine partie de leur mémoire ancestrale et voir un monument qui a disparu à jamais. C'est pour cela, c'est un travail formidable. Il faut le faire. Mais j'ai déjà signalé, il faut rester au niveau de nos ordinateurs, pas plus.
On a compris. Alors, Andrea Balbo, one of the biggest challenges, as we all know, is how to work in these very politically delicate situations, these tense situations. So, is digital modeling useful for your work in that way, that you can, does it help you in your work to be in these areas which are really complicated, and where what you're trying to do is promote peace amongst the different populations?
Difficult question. Thank you. But this is a case in point, the Syrian case, where it's not, we cannot intervene everywhere in Syria for political reasons, not just for physical risk. So in that case, is sometimes the only or one of the few options you have to maintain attention on a given situation, to keep creating content relative to a situation. So in that case, it was absolutely one of the few options to keep working in Syria, and it's not the only case. There are cases where you don't have physical access, and then you use other digital tools, satellite imagery, for example, to try and keep track of what's going on the ground. Which, I mean, information, now in this time of very dense information, you always have to be very careful what you take for granted, what information is real, what is fake. So digital tools can be very effective in that sense.
Jenny Maggi, I'd like to get back to your study for just a little bit about the usefulness or maybe not usefulness of these 3D modeling. What surprised you the most when you did your study?
Well, as I told before, we also had the idea of studying the link with social pacification processes. And what we discovered is that for most of the respondents, cultural heritage reconstruction, either virtual or real, and social pacification are quite distinct phenomenon. And a peace process would primarily require the resolution of socio-economic, political problems, and rather than the reconstruction of the heritage as such, either virtual or real. I know there is a debate about. And moreover, what we discover is also that the emphasis, too much emphasis on heritage reconstruction, either virtual or real, would be able to induce in Syrian population the idea that the stones count more than the people. And so it could be quite problematic. And in this sense, let's talk about the participation of population to decision of reconstructing or not. It is very important. And it's a result of the study, but it's also what a lot of experts say, including UNESCO, to favor the participation of population.
Yeah. Emanuela, do you see that as well? I mean, is it the priorities are maybe a little different or probably completely different when you're out in the field?
Yeah, definitely. There are displaced Syrians everywhere. Clearly, the people we work with are refugees in a camp, and they live in a limbo. So it's hard to describe it if you haven't been there. But what we have observed is one way of preserving part of their cultural identity and collective memory for Syrians is sticking together as a community. Now, Azra camp is mainly made up of Syrians. I think it's 90%. And they stick together and they share the same cultures and traditions. And we have observed that offering such opportunities as the workshops that we have conducted in collaboration with the University of Lausanne is a way of preserving their collective memory and of somehow sort of rediscover where they come from, and for the younger generations to actually know more about their cultural past. If I'm allowed to say, the problem that we see is that access to such opportunities, so to higher education opportunities, is extremely limited. You might have heard that just 1% of the refugee population has access to higher education. That's something that needs to change. It's very ambitious.
That's what you're working on.
Yes,
when
that's
you're
what
there.
we're working on. And that's why I think it's important to mention it. Giving them access to such opportunities would mean so much, would mean, empowering them not just to rediscover their cultural past, but to sort of feel vastly better and one day go back to Syria, hopefully, and build back better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Andrea Balbo, by preserving tangible works of art or monuments in a digital form, you also produce a new kind of heritage. So do you think they will have the same sustainability for you who are working on saving all this heritage? Will it have the same sustainability? Will it have the same impact, you think, as tangible heritage?
Well, about the impact, we will see with time. It's difficult to say now, but I think the point you raise on the sustainability is an important one, because as we digitize things, we are creating a new support. We are actually creating a new type of heritage, the same way that we have with VHS, which are now very difficult to watch, or some kind of old kind of digital support, which old relatively, because we're talking about 20, 30 years. So in many ways, they are more difficult to preserve than stone. It's difficult not only materially, these are often very delicate supports that require well, museum experts here know more about this. It needs physical room, archives. It needs electricity to be reproduced. It needs very complex objects like the phone I have in my pocket to be exploited, to be seen. So there are a lot of risks there in terms of long-term sustainability, and we've just walked in the long-term human history, we've just walked into this digital world and digital dimension. So it's difficult to say today where we will be in 50 or 100 years. I think to the advantage of it, and we are going back to open accessibility, open source. There is the multiplication, the easy duplication of all these materials, which plays in their advantage on one side, because every one of us can download photographs, digital photographs, and copy them. But then you have the point that was raised by Sarah in her with the authenticity. So again, we go back to what is fake, what is not fake. So I think there are a lot of dimensions to be considered in terms of sustainability and usability of this new kind of heritage.
One of the things that came out of in your conclusion of your study, Jenny Manji, is the importance of implicating the Syrian population in all the projects that are going on, whether it be reconstruction, whether it's 3D modeling and having access to this 3D modeling. It's very, very important, but it's not that simple, is it?
No, you're right. It's really not simple. I mean, we use a lot the rhetoric to involve the population in decision, but not only in Syria, in every country, for everything, for urban planning, for whatever. But it's really not easy to imply the population, and there are a lot of power also relation. Which kind of population? Population is not an entity like that. I mean, there are people with different kind of power, things like that. So, I mean, we should go a little bit beyond, let's say, this rhetoric, and think really in which kind of way to engage with the population. I mean, our respondents were saying that, okay, experts can decide in Congress or UNESCO about the reconstructing or not reconstructing, but okay, but what the population is thinking. I mean, we cannot decide just like that as expert. We could also go and discuss with different categories of people from Palmyra, for instance. Okay, I mean, now it's quite difficult, because I think still quite conflict, I think. So I'm not very expert of the situation, but well,
it's complicated.
Yeah, it's very complicated, but it's just the idea of democratizing decisions or implying also the diaspora. Diaspora.
Yeah.
There are very interesting virtual networks of architects, archaeologists, which reflect a lot on internet. So it's also interesting to involve them in sort of debates of
Yeah.
I think so.
Emanuele Sebastiani, you probably see that on the ground. I mean, when you go there, how important is it, and how can you have the Syrian population, the diaspora, they're not there, most of them, to get them to be more involved in the decisions which could be made, or even to help them to go back and continue this cultural heritage?
Well, when they're in a refugee camp, unfortunately, they're disempowered, and there is no, at least that I know of, there is not an open channel to sort of rope them in. However, what the University of Lausanne has done during these workshops is very interesting. So the group of people, the group of participants who did the embroidery activity, who learned a lot about the history of Palmyra and the 3D reconstruction of the Temple of Baalshamin, well, they were able to actively contribute to the little booklet that was published at the end of the project. And they gave their input in terms even of translation. They gave an active contribution to the Tyrese's glossary, English and Arabic. So that's one way of really engaging with them to produce a cultural output that in the end will have their voice too. What I have observed is that, first of all, they're extremely interested. They are delighted to know that the outside world and Western countries that have the means to invest in these projects do so. And as I said, for the younger generations, this is an opportunity of actually seeing virtually something that they will never see again. And if and when they return to their country, they can sort of have a stronger sense of identity and hopefully, as I said, build back better.
Of belonging also, I imagine. Yeah. Of belonging. Andrea Babbo, Alif has a motto. It's action, action, action. So what is the action solution for the Syrian population?
Well, I think one of the action solutions is exactly what Patrick and the group at UNIL are doing, which is taking care of the communities that are now displaced out of Syria. So keeping the human dimension alive and active and connected to their homeland, I think is for the case of Syria is really one of the major actions that we can do at the moment.
Okay. Michel Al-Maqdissi, this will be my last question. In the exhibit in Lausanne, which you probably have not seen, there is an interview of the Syrian archaeologist Hassan Ali. And he says, they have destroyed our memories, and like looking at a photo of someone who is no longer with us, looking at the 3D images brings back the pain of what is lost. Has Syrian heritage been destroyed, or quite the opposite? Is there resilience still there, and is it stronger?
Oui, je connais très bien Hassan qui vit en Turquie. Ce qu'il a dit, et c'est grâce à Patrick, c'est très touchant. Moi, je pense que c'est par ces types d'actions qu'on peut sauvegarder la mémoire ancestrale. Il faut multiplier ces types d'actions. Mais ce que je regrette, et là, vous allez me forcer à parler un petit peu politique, mais politique très modérée et archéologique. C'est que il n'y a pas, disons, si on veut faire tel projet, c'est très bien, mais il faut un plan d'action global. Il faut coordonner entre les différents projets. Et ça, ni l'UNESCO, ni Lausanne, ni Paris, ni Londres pourraient le faire. C'est à la direction des antiquités, au moins pour la question archéologique. Ce qui ne se passe pas jusqu'à maintenant, c'est pour cela on n'a pas une vision. Qu'est-ce qu'on va faire après? On fait les 3D, mais après, c'est quoi? C'est ça ce qui est regrettable. Alors, je ne veux pas donner des exemples du tout, mais je signale une petite chose que après 7 ans de désastre, après 7 ans de destruction, la direction des Antiquités a monté avec les Russes un projet de nettoyage d'une source qui n'a pas été abîmée pendant toute la guerre, la source principale de Afka, la source de Palmyre. C'est un projet facile. Moi, je peux coordonner ce projet à partir de Paris en envoyant des ouvriers de désherber. Alors, ils ont désherbé. Est-ce que ça, c'est un projet? Non, ça, c'est, à mon avis, une fausse impression qu'on est en train de mener une action à Palmyre. Palmyre, et pour d'autres villes de la Syrie, a besoin d'un plan d'action médité. Et ce que Patrick a essayé de faire quand il a invité les délégations de Syrie, mais je pense que ce qu'il a pensé à faire n'a pas été un bon aboutissement à Damas ou à la direction des Antiquités, ce que je regrette. Alors du coup, on n'a pas le choix, on va continuer à travailler chacun dans son côté, chacun dans un coin, et on va essayer de coordonner entre nous, mais finalement, est-ce que ça va aboutir à une action réelle sur le terrain? Ça, il faut qu'on attende, qu'on voit. Et j'ai des doutes que ça pourrait être bien efficace dans le futur.